Welcome back to the People I Meet podcast. It's been a while. Our first guest is my friend, author. You know him as Based Grandfather, author T.C. Townsend. He wrote the book, Imagine the Rock and Roll Party in coalition with the Worldwide Fairplay for Frogs Committee. I always,
That's the title, all right.
yeah, that is, and that's only half the title. Then there's the subtitle. You guys know him as Bass Grandfather on TikTok. If you haven't already, check him out. Subscribe to his TikTok channel, where he is all about being of good cheer for the good things that are here. Is that right?
Yeah, be unconditional love and be of good cheer for the good things happen.
TC, you and I met on TikTok. I like to tell people how we met. I can't remember exactly how it is we met. I just know that we met on TikTok.
Right.
And we started messaging back and forth, and before we knew it, we became friends. And then I found out about your book, and I got your book, and I read your book, and I enjoyed it. TC, tell us where are you from originally?
Okay, yeah. My father was in the military and I was born in Germany, but by the time I was 4, he had retired into a little town in Florida to be near his mother. So I grew up in Central Florida. And then when I was 19 or 20, I got married. My father had planned my life for the next 5 or 10 years. And I just said, nope, ain't going to play. I'm moving to Tennessee. And I went to Tennessee and I got a chance to apprentice carpentry. So I did 5 years there apprenticing carpentry. And my wife at the time wanted to go to New Mexico. So off we went into the land of enchantment. It was a great adventure. So I stayed in New Mexico, Santa Fe, on and off around that area for 11 years. And then I finally got into AA and got clean and sober. And I looked around and I said, what am I doing here? This is the middle of nowhere. And I wanted to go back where the people were. I realized that in Southern California, it was the carpenter's heaven. I mean, it was 70 degrees and they were building houses as far as you could see. And I said, I'm going to California. I was like Jed and the Clampets, I'm headed for California. I've been here since 88 and I've retired. I basically live in my room, taking care of my back, my little dog. That's kind of quickly the history. There's other things involved, as you know.
Right. So you grew up in Florida. Are you the typical, the Florida man that we hear about in all the news reports?
I was raised with
Okay.
And well, yes and no. There was a period of time where at 1 year I was in the back of a car with a shotgun running the hippies out of town.
Okay.
And the next year I had to leave town because I was shunned as a hippie.
So you converted.
In 1 year, it was like, and so I had to leave that hometown. I went to Orlando where my brother got me into the laborers union at Disney World where they were building Disney World. I got to work on Cinderella's castle and I'd go out every morning and I'd climb up to the tops of the spiral of the very tip top little tower. And I'd sit up there and I'd smoke a joint and I'd watch them bring the water into work. And just, it was like great. I mean, it was wide open. It was happening. That was in 1969, 70, 71. It was happening. It was going on. That was one adventure.
And how long did you stay there?
I was probably in Orlando. It was during the time when they were trying to draft me. I had this plan to stay out of the draft that I would move around the country and I would stay somewhere for 10 days and then send them a change of address and then move because they could never send me a draft notice because I was always moving. I got as far as Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a bum trip. So I had to come back, and luckily for me, the draft law ran out that year, and they didn't get to my number after they reinstated the draft law. They never got back to my number. So I got out by the grace of the power that did. Then what happened was I met this girl and we were on and off. And then I met this other girl, went hitchhiking cross country and came back, went back home and went back to junior college, got married, started my first trip to psychotherapy. It was great. They immediately realized that I had an identity complex and a fear of failure. I didn't know who the fuck I was and I didn't dare try it.
Okay. And what did they want you to do about that?
They didn't want me to do anything. They just let me talk. And I realized that I was real angry at my father. I kind of like started accepting myself with those, character flaws. I got married. I felt better after 7 sessions or 6 or 7 sessions. I was feeling high again. I'm ready to go. And I got married. We moved to Tennessee, and then I got divorced when I was in New Mexico. There I met a woman and we had a child, and then she raised him, and I was an estranged father. And I spent years in therapy over that. What should I do? Should I give up the life of my imagining to go be what I'm supposed to be as a father? Or do I, live the life of my imagining and see him from afar and, visit him when I can? It turned out when he was about maybe 7 years old, there was a time when I realized that he had created what's called a Disneyland dad, that he thought of me with all these high ideas. And I realized it when I told him about smoking. And he said, "You don't smoke." And I realized he doesn't have a clue who I am. He thinks I'm something special. And so at that point, I withdrew, and he had a man come into his life that I couldn't have picked a better man. He was a carpenter artist, outdoorsy kind of guy, took my son on all these 14,000-foot hikes and stuff. And it was, and then he had a great life. He got to go to the United World College in Wales, and he got to go to Princeton, and then he got to go to law school. So he's now, grown and got 2 kids of his own. And I just always feel like he did it better off without me because, I was so confused about what it meant to be a father. And I couldn't get in touch with who I was because of all the rules. And when I get in touch with who I am, I'm a very loving, caring person when I can be in touch with that. But when the rules are there, no, thank you. I can't get there.
Okay. So that's quite interesting. All right. So while you were in New Mexico, you started your own political party, or you started a political party. Tell us about that political party a little bit.
I was working at Sunrise Springs New Age Holistic Healing Center, and I was living on the property, and I was staying in the caretaker's house. And so whenever we went to concerts, we would all meet up there because it was on the way to Albuquerque where the concerts were. And, we would prepare for the concerts, we would get high. One night we were getting ready for a concert and we were joking around, and I said, "Well, I'm going to start a political party, a rock and roll party." And we all laughed about it. And then later I was down at the New Age Holistic bookstore, and I was talking to Jessica. It was the Voice of the Turtle, I think was the name of that store. But anyway, she said her dream was to create a luxury tea house for commoners. And not to be outdone, my dream is to create a rock and roll party. And so I did. And I set about finding out what do you have to do to create a party. And I got the booklets and all that stuff. And I actually did it. I got to where I knew my representatives and they kind of knew me. I was on the radio. I got in the paper. But it was, like I say later, it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it was just a lot about me playing, but I had fun. The idea was you're not going to get people interested in politics, but you can get them to party. So you invite them to a party where you take the proceeds of the party and you give that to people doing good deeds in the world. That was the idea, but it never came to pass.
Wait, how did it never come to pass? You had affiliates in how many different states?
Well, they were just pen pal kind of.
All right, so this is all in the book, folks. Get the book.
All in the book.
Imagine the Rock and Roll Party in coalition with the Worldwide Fairplay for Frogs Party. T.C. Townsend, Based Grandfather. Go check out his TikTok page, Based Grandfather. All right, so you started the Rock and Roll Party, and it was basically just you having a good time and messing with far right wingers. So tell us, what else were you doing that you were working at this place called what Springs?
It was Sunrise Springs. It was a New Age Holistic Healing Center. This woman, she was a trust fund. She was an heiress. She had bought a house in Santa Fe on Upper Canyon Road and was remodeling. And I thought, wow, I want to work there. I want to work on the big house. And I got a job there. And then eventually she told me she had a property outside of town that in La Cienega, which is Spanish for the swamp, but it was the old way station between Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and it was about 20 miles outside of town. And it had a pond, and there was a big house, two other buildings, and they just had a new building that was being built called the Moon House. She sent me out there to take a look at it and see what I thought about it. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. And anyway, so the next thing I know, I'm at a meeting with these architects and they're talking about this plan. So I'm just blown away. It's like, oh my God, what a chance. I get a chance to work on this and be part of this. And so I had my own crew and my own part of the task. What happened was right at the day that I found out about Sunrise Springs, the Holistic Healing Center, my father was in the hospital. When I came back from that meeting, I got a phone call saying, you need to come home and see your father. And it was like, oh God. One more time on the cusp of my life, and my father's telling me I need to bend my knee to his authority, and it was like, but anyway, so the next day, he actually passed, and I had an epiphany. Before he passed, I was driving home after that call, and I just realized that I thought about this old carpenter, Early Smith, and he had a father, and his father was a man like other men. And so Early's a carpenter, and his father was a man like other men. I'm a carpenter, so my father must be a man like other men. And when I realized my father was just a man like other men, I forgave him. And the whole valley started to glow with light of forgiveness. So I had that epiphany I felt like that was setting him free to pass on into his next stage of life, beyond life, whatever it is. I don't think we're supposed to really know. I took the crew from her house in town out to Sunrise Springs. Before it was all over, I ended up being in charge of the whole thing. And then we were supposed to go to Mexico for Christmas, and it got so crazy. Said, I can't go to Mexico with you. So I went home to Florida. And when I got back, she always would say, get ready for the 80s, get ready for the 80s. And so 1980, January 1st, 1980, I find out she's in the hospital in Los Angeles for a mental breakdown or whatever, nervous exhaustion or whatever. She just went to Mexico and went wild. Ended up arrested. Her family had to go rescue her. So I was told that, I'm a little fish in a big pond. And she had put me on the board of directors she made it a nonprofit organization. And she put me on the board of directors, knowing that when the time came, I would give up. I would surrender my place to whatever the good of the company was or whatever. And so when it came time, they told me to go lay off everybody but 5 people to shut it down. And I went in and I laid off myself. And I said, I ain't laying nobody else off. You can get this old man that I hired to help me. He can lay him off. And I left. 2 years later, I saw her, and it was just like no time had passed. I went back and I spent another couple of years hanging around there. And so she had brought this guy in that was going to make it a business conference center. And so just at that time, I made the idea that, well, I'll make it a frog castle. So I decided what a frog castle is a place where you go and in safety, you go deep inside and you find all the things you hide, deny, and repress about yourself, and you embrace them. And I call that the frog, and you kiss the frog and you become a prince. And that's what you do in the frog castle.
So this is the woman who owned this place. She was a trust fund baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you built a frog castle at Sunrise Springs.
Right.
Right. All right. And then if you want to hear the rest of that story, folks, get the book, read the book. Imagine the Rock and Roll Party in coalition with the Worldwide Fairplay for Frogs Committee. I know I keep saying the whole title, but I want you to, I promise you, if you type in Imagine the Rock and Roll Party in Coalition, that's probably the only book that's going to come up, or the first book that's going to come up. And I've read the book. It is a good book. It is an easy read. And there's a lot of great stories in it. TC is a good storyteller. So at some point, you ended up, you weren't trying, but you ended up having a son.
Yes.
And you decided to get sober. Is that right?
Well, I told myself when I started doing drugs, if I ever got where I couldn't pay my bills, I'd quit. Well, I woke up one morning and I wanted to die because I'd spent all my money on drugs and I couldn't pay my bills. And I was thinking about ways to end it. And I get a call from my son. At that time, he's 2 years old and he's in Baltimore. I realized, well, maybe I should do something about this. So I got his mother on the phone and found out the name of a psychologist. I went down there and I said, look, I know there's something wrong with me, but I don't know what it is. And she said, well, as long as you're medicating it, you're not going to know what it is. And so you need to quit medicating it and you need to go down and see these people. And she sent me to AA. My purpose wasn't to really get off of drugs because I thought they were bad. I had to get off drugs because I thought that I was medicating whatever was wrong with me. And it worked out great. They told me to go home. Well, first off, they told me I belonged in Narcotics Anonymous, not AA. I needed to be in the one for drugs. Ended up in Cocaine Anonymous. I've been, at one point it was like, it's better for me to tell you what I'm not than what I am as far as that.
Okay.
They told me to go home and pray. And I went home and prayed. And the next thing I know, I had this man disease, and you got to stay off your feet for 30 days. So I was in bed for 30 days and I had my mother come and take care of me. And so none of my drug friends would come around because my mother was there. And the only people that came were the people from the 12-step. And after 30 days, I was pretty much done with the drugs on to find out what was going on. And I finally realized, no, I have major depression and manic bipolar depression. Eventually, they put me back on drugs.
So what drugs did they put you on?
Prozac. It worked for me. I remember it was like turning on a light in a dark room. It didn't make any of the problems go away, but I could see them. I could walk around them. I could deal with them. I could move them around and I could do work on them. And then it also was like, it felt like a overloaded plane trying to take off. It would get up and then it'd come back down and get up a little bit more. Then eventually it kind of gradually took off and then it took off. And I came to my next epiphany. I'd spent all the time up until then trying to figure out, who am I? And then with that, I've said, oh shit, I'm me. I'm an ever-changing ebb and flow of feelings, thoughts, and ideas that you can't put in a box. And I've been spending my whole life trying to describe what I am when it's undescribable. It's me. You wait, before this conversation's over, I'll be different.
So you're like the weather in the Midwest.
Right.
Okay. So how long did that take, and how much work did you have to put in before you finally came to that revelation of yourself?
Well, I did 5 or 10 years in 12-step. I did 10 years in a men's group. In the men's group, we would do this thing where we had all these processes, but my favorite was where if you had an emotional issue, you would track that back to the first time you can remember having that feeling and then reframe it and give yourself a new voice in your head instead of, I'm not enough. No, you're really brilliant and nice. And people like you. It was like at the end of that 10 years, I ended up having to deal with my hips, and I didn't have insurance. So all I could do was go to the clinic, and all they could do is put me on pain management. So for a year, I took Vicodin, one in the morning and one at night. I just stayed high for a year. And so I couldn't go to my group anymore because one of the rules in the group was you had to be sober and present. And I wasn't anymore. I got both my hips replaced, and I'd gone to see a back surgeon, and the back surgeon said, there's really nothing that can be done. And I said, well, what about the pain? And she said, well, you'll just have to live with it. So what I've realized, as much as everybody told me, you need to stay active, you need to get around, I found out what works for me is to just kind of sit in my chair and be happy and be content with having what I really always wanted, was to sit around and think about stuff all day. And now I have TikTok as an outlet for that, and it's just working out wonderful, and I'm pumped up.
I would really like for you to start writing out a bunch of your stories.
It's interesting you say that, because I got some stories, I call them journeys. I put some of the stories in the book, but it was when I was doing guided imagery. So I have stories about the different guided imageries I have. I told you about the one where I went inside and I found a little child and he found the higher power, and they got together and they were expanding, and I just kept getting smaller and smaller, and I turned into this little knot of fear. And it was like, what is that? It was like I didn't want to admit I was wrong, because at that time I still believed that if I was wrong, that I was vulnerable and I could be shamed and shunned and thrown away for not being right, not knowing what's going on. So
Yeah, the real man's disease.
yeah. So then there's I have probably 15 stories like that. Yeah, I don't think I want to go through the process of writing another book. I do tell some of those stories on TikTok.
Yeah, well, we'll have to get you telling more. We need a
Okay.
record of them. We need a record of them. We want people to know some new possibilities.
Right on.
And so you are on TikTok as Based Grandfather. You are the book is on Amazon. Is it available anywhere else other than Amazon?
No, just
Okay.
there. In my life, I got a patent on a thing called the Happy Hands Clothes Tree. I've done all these different things, and I'm good at starting stuff but never having it come to fruition. I have all these different things that I started, and then I was into hockey one time, then I was into fishing, and then I was into gardening, then I built a fountain in the patio, and then it was always up to something. So now that I'm stationary, it's like I'm just feel blessed to have friends like you and to be on TikTok, still growing and changing. And I tell you, I feel like I am on the super roller coaster. I think it's the transformation, and I'm not sure that everybody's not going, not everybody, but I'm sure a lot of people are going through this thing of uncertainty, up, down, confusion. Where's it going? What's going to happen? And my last video was, I think I just came to the point where hold on to your ass with both hands and hope to get through this.
While you're going through this, whether it's a transformation or just another of life's roller coaster rides, what's the secret to continuing to be able to remain in unconditional love and be of good cheer for the good things that are happening?
I thought I needed to own my feelings, but turns out that I have my feelings, but they're so uncomfortable and they don't take me anywhere but to a place of they just take me down. And I'm realizing that I do have a task here now, and that it's for me to be of good cheer and to be positive. And I tell myself, I have all this privilege, I'm retired, I have Social Security, I'm white, I'm a man, all this stuff. And yet I tell myself, is it fair for me to talk about be of good cheer when so many people don't have what I have? And not only do they not have what I have, but they suffer from the fact that I have what I have. It took it from them to give it to me. I struggle with that. The thing I come back to is, if I can't do it, if I can't be positive with all the good things that I have going on for me, who's going to be positive? Who's going to say, hey, come on, we're getting through this. There's going to be a brighter tomorrow. You watch. And the things are happening now. It's like we talked earlier that there's two things happening simultaneously. There's the tragedy and then there's the awakening. I'm being dropped into the dark night of my soul, and at the same time I'm coming to a new place of awareness that, yeah, my feelings, I am feeling my feelings. It's just they don't serve me or anything right now to stay in them. So I move to a place where I feel like my purpose is to be of good cheer and to welcome the good things coming.
All right. Any departing and any final words of wisdom before we end this interview and say
I have just the joy that you gave me by asking me and let me talk about myself. Investigate who you are and find out the truth of that, and then become it. Not to become it, realize that you are it. Oh, I think where I would leave it is accept yourself and love yourself wherever you're at right now, because that's the place you're going to grow from. You're not going to grow from where you want to be. You got to grow from where you are. And we're in a serious transformation. And my sources, my astrological sources, are telling me one more year and we're going to be moving with we're going to be in a new paradigm. So this is the final year of 7 years of deep change, and we've been in for the last 7 years. This is the culmination.
Well, I can only say that I hope you are correct, sir.
I do too.
Yeah. All right. Well, TC, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, check out his book, Imagine the Rock and Roll Party in Coalition with the Worldwide Fairplay for Frogs Committee, or There's More to the New Age Than Parking on the Front Row. That's the full title
Right.
of the book. And then check out his TikTok channel, Based Grandfather. They're on TikTok. He's coming up on like 7,000 followers. He's just blowing up, and it's fun to watch him grow in that area, and he just enjoys himself. So check him out there. If you are somebody who doesn't have a loving grandfather in your life, check out his channel. Consider adopting TC as your based grandfather.
Thank you, Dean. It was so great of you to do this and invite me. Thank you so much for your guidance and your questions.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, TC. Thanks.